Hello, McDonald Middle School class of 2026. Hopefully this week is finding everybody doing well. This is Mrs. Kildane. I'm going to start off today with our first lesson in about 5 or 6 that is going to be talking a little bit more in depth about ecosystems, the organisms within them, the relationships, and even what happens when the relationships or when ecosystems get out of balance. Today's lesson is primarily going to be about terms and hopefully some review words for you. After the lesson, you're going to have an opportunity to play a game online, and there's a video for you kind of showing you how to set up your avatar for that. So let's get started with talking about energy flow in the ecosystems. Energy flow. So one thing we need to know about how energy originates in ecosystems is that all energy comes from the sun. It is our main source of energy. The sun releases packets of energy called photons. Now, in order to live, all organisms have to obtain energy, but not all of them can obtain their energy directly from the sun. So that brings us to the first level of organisms within our ecosystem that we call autotrophs, or commonly known as producers. Autotrophs and producers can use the energy that comes directly from the sun to make fuel in organic molecules like sugar. So basically, an autotroph can make its own food. Okay? If you think about yourself, you can't go and stand out in the sun and just put out your arms and collect the rays and produce sugar or energy. Okay? We have to consume organisms in order to have energy, but autotrophs don't. They are able to use the sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, to produce glucose, which is another word for a type of sugar, and they also produce oxygen, which is their waste product. Now, moving on, we have what are called heterotrophs, or consumers. Now, a heterotroph, or a consumer, relies on other organisms for their energy. So these are going to be the organisms that eat other organisms. Sometimes within an ecosystem, some organisms are able to eat the producers. So think about a beetle or a rabbit. They can go out and eat grasses and flowers and leaves, which are all examples of autotrophs, are producers. And they can take in those autotrophs or producers in order to gain energy. Some of the organisms within our ecosystem eat other consumers. So we have some terms that describe these organisms. We have what are called herbivores. So those are our organisms that obtain energy by eating just plants. And so think of those trees and flowers and leaves. Then we have carnivores. Carnivores are usually a little bit further into our food chains, which you're going to learn about on Thursday. Carnivores eat animals, so they're not able to eat the producers and digest them. They have to eat some organism that has consumed the producer. Then we have omnivores. These are organisms that are able to eat both plants and animals. And then we find scavengers. These feed on the remains of plants and animals or other organisms once they've passed on and are dead. And then finally, we have what are called decomposers. Now, decomposers come around, so these would be bacteria and fungus, and they break down organic matter after it has been kind of picked apart by our scavengers. Now, how does energy flow? Well, as I said earlier, energy originates from the sun. So the sun has energy packets that go down and are absorbed by producers. So here we see, when we're following from our sun to the tree, we see the energy aerial. So the producers, or the tree, takes in the sun's energy, and they use it in a few different ways. Part of this energy is used for heat and growth, so producing leaves, growing limbs, growing flowers. Some of this energy is lost because it's consumed by other organisms. So here we see a rabbit. And sometimes things are broken down by decomposers. So energy flows through the ecosystem, but notice that the yellow arrows are only going in one direction. Our energy starts at the sun, and then it moves in one way. So what this means is that the energy from this tree is never going to be able to be absorbed by the sun, okay? Or this energy in the rabbit is never going to be consumed by the tree. Okay, it flows in one direction. So the energy starts from the sun, is used by some type of producer to provide energy. Now notice that the yellow arrow is off the tree, that there are more than one. Because one thing we have to keep in mind, and we're going to talk about on Thursday, is that as energy moves through the ecosystem, it is not 100% transferred. All the energy that's contained in this flower or that's contained in these leaves does not end up being able to be used by the rabbit, because some of the energy that the plant has made is used in other ways. So for example, to grow or to produce seeds for reproduction. Same thing with this rabbit. And even you'll see here a mouse. The rabbit is going to need to be able to produce heat. It's going to need energy for movement. It's going to need energy for reproduction. So whatever organism may consume the rabbit, let's say a wolf, all of the energy that is stored in the rabbit is not going to transfer. And we'll talk about that idea in our next video. So just as a review, energy, okay, our sunlight is the source of energy for all living items. That energy is used by producers to make food. Those producers are consumed by what is called a first level consumer. In this case, we see this prairie dog. This would be an example of a herbivore because he is eating grasses in the grasslands. And then our first level consumer will then be consumed by an omnivore or a carnivore. We'll call those second level consumers. Again, we'll talk about this more on our video on Thursday. And so the energy is going to flow one way through our energy system. Okay. Now, after that decomposer, so let me go back to that. After that consumer has eaten some of the organism, there's going to be parts of the prairie dog that the wolf is not able to consume. There'll be little bits of food left on the skeletal system. So along will come the consumer that we call a scavenger. So here we see a turkey vulture that is going to pick apart those bones, and then whatever he is not able or she is not able to eat, decomposers will come in. So our bacteria and our fungus, and they will finish consuming all of that. All right, now that we have gone back over some of those terms, don't forget to click on the next link. The video that you will see there is going to show you how to set up an avatar for the game that's going to review producers, consumers, so that you become familiar with those terms before we learn a little bit more about how complex our food webs and chains are.